I don't think there's anybody who can mute, so you're going to have to each one of us mute ourselves, okay?
Okay.
Hello, my name is Josiah Hostetler, and good morning. I think we have friends joining us on Zoom too. So, I wanted to share from a book called The Peacemaker's Path, and this is a book written by a man named Jerry Zare, who's been involved in interfaith interactions and reconciliation here in central Indiana. And the chapter I'll be reading from is called Initiate Reconciliation. We can be inspired by the stories we hear of people trying to bring reconciliation between themselves and those whom they have harmed. In his book, Life After Hate, Arno Michaelis tells of being a former racist skinhead. He examines aspects of his past. Where did the hate begin? How did a teenage alcoholic become a central figure in the white power movement of the late 80s and early 90s? He later created a nonprofit named after the title of his book, with its mission statement being, "Life After Hate is dedicated to inspiring individuals to a place of compassion and forgiveness for themselves and all people." Sometimes reconciliation involves coming to terms with harm caused by your ancestors. Adam Berkowitz tells about Claudia Kaisinger, for example, who had two grandfathers who served in the Wehrmacht, Nazi Germany's army in World War II. She has devoted her life to healing wounds of the Holocaust. Her story tells of hope and devotion, and most of all, to being open to the healing power that comes from above. I'll share a couple of different scriptures from different faith sources. The first are the words of Buddha. Hatred does not cease through hatred at any time. Hatred ceases through love. This is an unalterable law. Second, from Matthew 5:23 through 24. If you are offering your gift to the altar and there remember that your brother has something against you, leave your gift there before the altar and go. First be reconciled to your brother, and then come and offer your gift. Please stand and in body or spirit for worship in Song 120, Fairest Lord Jesus.
So once a quarter, the Finance Committee has asked, has made it a point to try to have education on how we at Fairfield use our money. And a large part of that education is trying to be coordinated through the Outreach Committee. So we have asked Jim Mulholland to come and speak to us just a few minutes this morning about the work that he does, that he is the executive director of with COCODA. Now, side note, I love Jim Mulholland. Jim Mulholland and Phil Gulley are twin sons of different mothers. Okay, they met the first day of seminary, and it goes on from there. So it's always a delight when we get to spend time with Jim Mulholland. Jim has this lovely wife, Jen Custer, who, God love her, she is a saint just like I'm a saint. Because, you know, if there's a heaven and when Jen and I die, we are on the express route. We don't have to go through TSA check-in or anything. Like you up there. So, but all joking aside, Jim does amazing work with COCODA, and he is here to talk with us a few minutes about that this morning. And then I'll do a few minute wrap up when he is done. So, Jim.
It would really embarrass him if we all stood and clapped right now. So let's do that. You know, if there is a heaven, Phil and I are going to be in the long line toward the back somewhere, and we'll be arguing about who got what right. You know, so that's what we'll be talking about. Thank you so much for allowing me to spend a few minutes with you this morning and with those of you who are on Zoom. First off, I need to thank you. Whether you are aware of it or not, your meeting has been helping to make university education possible for young people in Nicaragua for the last 3 years. We're in the 4th year of a program, and Fairfield is the primary sponsor of that program. So first off, thank you for doing that. Let me tell you a little bit about what it's like to grow up in Nicaragua. Back in the 1990s, when you went to Central America, the only place you saw telephones were in the major cities and maybe some of the smaller towns. Telephones were just not available. They didn't have the infrastructure for telephones to be throughout the country. But of course, cell phones changed that radically. So by the early 2000s, cell companies down in Central America figured out that providing phones very cheaply to people would be a smart thing. And so today, if you go to Nicaragua, you can go back into the very end of the road, into the jungle, and you will find people on cell phones. And often, I've been surprised, I've gone to communities that didn't even have electricity, and they had cell phones. They would have generators that they would use to charge their phones, or they would use cars. They would have a car that somebody would use so people could charge their phones. Now that has been wonderful in some ways, that it has connected people in these communities way back in the jungle and in the country to the whole world and to all the possibilities of the world, all the information of the world. And that's a wonderful thing. But it also can be a depressing thing. If you're a young person who's 16 years old and you're seeing all this wide world and you're thinking, how can I possibly connect to that world? So a few years ago, in response to that problem, we created the Young Rural Dreamers program. And the idea was to find these young people who had the drive, the intelligence, the desire, and lived in these communities, these rural communities, find them and make it possible for them to go to university. And we can do that for $250 a year per person. Now that's possible because education in Nicaragua is free if you can get to the university. But the problem is for many of these people, that's sometimes 2, 3, 4 hour drive to get to a university. So how do you do that? So with just $25 a month, a couple things happen. For a few families, they have enough resources that extra 25 is enough to maybe pay for a room for a month that they can have at the where the university is located, so that they can actually go and live and attend university just like we would here in the States. But for a vast number of students, what it does is it provides enough money so on Friday night they can get on a bus, they can travel 2 or 3 hours to a university town, they can attend classes on Saturday and Sunday, and Sunday night get on the bus and come back to their rural communities. And that $25 pays for their transportation, maybe a room for the night, a little bit of food, money for some school supplies. $25 a month makes that possible for them to have an education. And right now, we are getting ready. They just started school, and we will now have 20 students. This program started, as I said, about 3 years ago. We had 15 who have been part of that program since the beginning, and we've only lost one. So these kids are invested in changing their lives. Someone was saying, well, $250 doesn't sound like very much. Well, I want you to know for many of these families, they subsist on the things they can grow in their farms, and then they probably work in the coffee harvest and make maybe $400 or $500 of cash. And that $400 or $500 of cash is what that family relies on for the entire year. So when you put that in perspective, $250 is a huge investment in that family. It's about half of what they earn the entire year. It would be like giving a family here in the United States $20,000 or $30,000 towards their child's education. So it does amazing things. We have a program in El Salvador that's been going on now for 25 years, very similar program. And there are over 150 kids who've graduated from this program. And these are kids who then return to their communities and do powerful things. They become doctors and nurses and lawyers and social workers and engineers, teachers. They do great things. And they're much less likely to ever take that desperate decision of trying to migrate to the United States, because they've got the wherewithal to stay in the country that they love and to which they want to invest their lives. So again, thank you so much for what you've done in the past. I know that the Outreach Committee is asking again for people to be supportive of this. We need to raise about $4,000 this year to fund the program. I'm sorry, $5,000, but we've already received a gift of $1,000 from one of your members who said, I want to sponsor 4 of those kids. So I hope you'll consider joining that person and being part of this exciting way to change the lives of some incredible young people. Thank you.
Well, good
As
afternoon.
Jim said, their budget for this year is $5,000. That will send 20 students for their for a year of university. There are 5 that are in their 4th year, 5 that are in their 3rd year, 5 that are in their 2nd year, and 5 that are starting this year. If you are interested in supporting this cause, you can write a check to Danville. I'm in school mode. Fairfield Friends Outreach, and put, what's the youth? Just put COCODA in the memo section, and we will make sure that all funds are funneled then on to Jim. So that would make a huge difference in the lives of 20 children that then go on to make the huge difference in the lives of others. So thank you. Thank you for considering this good cause.
Thank you, Joanne and Jim. What a wonderful opportunity to hear from you today about COCODA. As a reminder, offerings can be made on the website or through the donation plates that are in the back of the meeting hall here today. Now is our time for announcements. If there are any announcements on Zoom.
This is Dinah Geiger, and I just wanted to remind everybody about Family Promise, which starts on the 27th. And the sign-up sheet is in the dining room, and hopefully it's already all completely signed up by now. Anyway, if you signed up for any breakfast or lunch items, they need to be at the meeting house by Sunday, the 27th. And Joanne Farrington's going to take those to the resource center. And those of you that signed up for dinners the week before, I will let you know specific numbers or any dietary restrictions when we know for sure who will be there. Thank you.
Hello, this is Bill Smith. I just wanted to remind everybody that we're going to have a big musical presentation by Winborn on April 21st. Jeff Gabbard has put a page up on our fairfieldfriends.org internet page, and there is a place where you can say whether or not you are interested in coming. If you have time and you can, get on that page and let us know so we can start getting an idea of how many people are coming. Thank you.
There are no other announcements on Zoom. We'll move to the meeting hall.
Who I was last time. Randy asked me to mention again that next Sunday we'll be meeting for business at 7 p.m. on Zoom. Thank you.
Hi, this is Jimmy McClung. I have a couple announcements on behalf of Tara Stewart. The first one is, and they're both kind of go together, but they are, the Easter egg hunt will be at, the children's Easter egg hunt will be at 10 a.m. on Easter Sunday, I think, starting at the old meeting house for a photo. So it starts at 10 a.m. Easter party and then dining room after with light snacks. And donations are wrapped Easter candy for that. It's accepted until April 2nd. Thank you.
Hi, Jeff Gabbard. Just a reminder that we had the email go out this week for the spring hike sign up. The hike will be April 15th at Brown County State Park, asking for you to go to that link and register by April 7th so I can make reservations for lunch afterwards. So we've got about 10 people so far. Should be a good time.
This is John Essex. April 7th, I will be showing some astrophotography for an art gallery thing. It's the first time I'm ever doing something like this. So April 7th at the Murphy Arts Center in Fountain Square, first Friday in April. It'd be great if you guys could come and check out my astrophotography.
I would love to do that.
Friends, let us pray. We gather today with grateful hearts, appreciating again the beauty of community, of compassionate friends who reach outside and beyond their own lives to make the lives of others better. We're grateful for the work of Jim Mulholland and Coco Daw. Their simple and yet profound efforts to bring dignity to human life, to educate, to feed, to supply water, to bring some sense of grace and dignity to human life. For that we are grateful. We are grateful for all the people in this world who wake up each morning committed anew to the betterment of all they meet, whose spirits are good, whose hearts are true. Let us always be numbered among them. Amen. Well, I was thinking this week, our dog is kind of getting old and getting a little gray muzzle, and made me think of the inevitability of pets passing on and getting a new pet. I remember when I was a kid, we had 2 dogs and a cat, and all 3 of the animals were claimed by my siblings, so whenever I tried to cozy up to them, my brothers or my sister would say, leave that dog alone. That's my dog. That's my cat. I kept telling my mother I wanted a pet of my own, and she kept resisting, not wanting to tend another pet. But then, fortunately, in the 4th grade, I contracted a serious illness that our family doctor, Dr. Kirtley, couldn't diagnose, that had never been seen, some exotic, mysterious disease that had never been seen in Danville, brought to our town, according to Dr. Kirtley, by a carnival worker. The carnival came to Danville every July, set up on the town square, and anything bad that happened while they were in town and in the months that followed was laid at their feet. Thefts, disturbances of every sort, fires, disease. One time a woman in our town ran off with a carnival worker and then returned to Danville in a family way and gave birth to a little carny baby who emerged from the womb sporting a tattoo, smoking a Marlboro. That's how we knew it was the offspring of a carnival worker. So there I was, near death, my mom hovering over me, and she asked, what can I get you? And I, in a weakened voice, said, a pet. She got her purse, climbed in our pea green 1969 Plymouth Valiant, and drove to Danner's 5 and Dime on the town square, returning home with a cage and 2 gerbils, which she named Romulus and Remus, the mythical founders of Rome. I had never heard those names, not being a student of Roman mythology, but we had a set of World Book encyclopedias, so I looked up Romulus and Remus and was shocked to discover they were considered gods. What in the world was my Catholic mother thinking, naming our gerbils after pagan gods? Had she lost her mind? I kept reading the World Book Encyclopedia and discovered there were other historical figures thought to be divine: Egyptian pharaohs, Chinese and Japanese emperors, Julius Caesar, Homer, Alexander the Great, and Mary, mother of Jesus, just to name a few. I read their names aloud to my parents, and my father said, don't forget Babe Ruth, and so him too. Up until then, I thought Jesus had the divine market all to himself. I'd had no idea that humankind had been in the God-making business since our earliest days, all the way back, we think, to Ishtar of Mesopotamia, the goddess of love and war. Those two often feel a lot alike. Ishtar of Mesopotamia, goddess of love and war, the first deity for whom we have written evidence. Isn't theology fascinating? We've been talking about the importance of good theology, that the antidote to bad theology is good theology. We remember the words of Bishop Spong, who said there's not conservative theology or liberal theology, there's only bad theology and good theology. Bad theology, we know, gives birth to many cultural disorders, including Christian nationalism, this toxic mix of partisan politics, white supremacy, and evangelical Christianity, a movement many in our nation seem eager to embrace. We spent the past 2 weeks reflecting on the nature of God, so today I invite us to consider Jesus, and more specifically, to consider how Jesus became God and why. When I say Jesus became God, what I mean to say is that the divinity of Jesus was a human invention. That as a first century monotheistic Jew, Jesus would have likely rejected any claim to divinity. It would have just been outside his wheelhouse. It wouldn't have occurred to him. We see hints of this in the Bible. Once in Luke's gospel, when a religious leader called Jesus good teacher, and Jesus replied, why do you call me good? No one is good but God alone. Time and again, we see in his humility and humanity and unwillingness to elevate himself. Jesus was not a narcissist demanding worship. He was a servant, inviting others to serve with him. But because we are exceptionally good God makers, we promoted Jesus from teacher to God in the centuries following his death, until formally defining his nature at the Council of Nicaea, which was held in 325 AD, oddly enough by voting on it, about whether or not Jesus was divine. We took a vote on it. It was almost though inevitable that this would happen, given our propensity for elevating our heroes. In Jesus' lifetime and in the centuries following, the Roman Empire and their divine emperor had a powerful grip on Israel and the surrounding nations. The early church refuted Caesar's claim of divinity, chiefly by elevating Jesus. It was an early example of sticking it to the man. As you can imagine, this was not warmly embraced by Rome, and Christians were persecuted until gaining political favor under the Emperor Constantine, who made Christianity the state religion, an event we welcomed, but now must surely regret, not realizing it would one day lead to televangelism and Ted Cruz. So this is what happens. But we are exceptionally good God makers. We want to pay homage to those persons whose lives have been meaningful to us. So we grant them divine status. It's our way of saying someone embodies the finest virtues we can imagine. When the early church claimed Jesus was divine, they were saying the priorities and values of Jesus exemplified the priorities and values of God. John Dominic Crossan said, if God were to take on human form, Jesus is what it would look like. That's what the early church was saying, that if God were to take on human form, Jesus is what it would look like. And then over time, that just became a whole theology built up and added to. For the early church, it was not enough to say that Jesus was a good person. They wanted him to be a good God. While I understand that, I regret that it has devalued the intrinsic value of what it means to be human. So now we have this lopsided equation where humanity resides on a lower plane than divinity. And I believe that's contrary to the message and work of Jesus, who I believe had a high regard for humanity and is not honored by our diminishment. For Jesus to be good, it does not follow that humans must be bad. It simply does not follow. But I think there's another reason we create gods, and it's this, that just as soon as we elevate someone to divine status, we give ourselves an excuse not to be like them. Oh, I could never be like Jesus. He's God after all. Even though Jesus seemed to clearly expect his followers to do what he did and live like he did. Indeed, he told them they would do even greater things than he had done. That doesn't sound like a God to me. That sounds like a man with a high regard for human potential. We don't honor Jesus by making him God, by crowning him king and installing him as the head of the state religion, thereby investing his followers with worldly power and forcing him and ourselves upon others. We honor Jesus when we live as he lived, when we heal, when we have good news for the poor, when we love the outsider, when we lift up the oppressed, when we embrace our enemies, when we set the prisoners free. Jesus is never elevated by our words. Jesus is elevated by our actions, by our steadfast determination to do what he did with glad and joyful hearts.
We'll now stand in body and spirit and sing worship in Song 100, Seek You First the Kingdom of God.
So 62 years I've been trying to figure out who I want to be. And this week I am pleased to report I discovered it. On YouTube of all places, an elderly Japanese man who builds houses in the old custom of fitting the pieces together through intricate joinery and not nails. And he begins each lesson by doing this. He has no idea who will watch his videos, but nevertheless, he bows in respect. He concludes each lesson the same way. A humble, gracious bow. I am so tired of categories that compel me to bow to some but not to others. So this week, let us see only humanity, and let us find within ourselves the capacity to honor everyone we encounter, knowing that they, like us, are on a journey not yet finished. Let's bow together, friends. Turn and greet one another. Oh, Jimmy, you have food. You have food. Okay, bring the kids in. This is food for Kunat.